And we start in the Middle East, where the Lebanese Health Ministry says at least 6 people have been killed by an Israeli strike on central Beirut. These are live pictures showing smoke filling the skyline of the Lebanese capital. The IDF says it has carried out what it calls precise strikes on a building in the Basra neighborhood near the Lebanese parliament. Dahieh, Hezbollah's stronghold in southern Beirut, was also attacked. Israel has issued a fresh call for civilians to leave these areas. And in the past hour, the Iran-backed Houthi militia said they carried out a drone attack on Tel Aviv. In a statement, the Houthis said they carried out a military operation on a vital target in the Jaffa area. Israeli authorities have not confirmed the claim. Meanwhile, President Biden has said he will not support any attack by Israel on Iran's nuclear sites in response to Tuesday's missile barrage by Tehran. Israel's military says 8 of its soldiers were killed in the first 2 days of its ground invasion of Lebanon. Hezbollah says it fired guided missiles at their tanks. Peter Bowes reports.
More explosions ring out overnight in Lebanon. The Israeli army says it conducted a precise attack on Basra in central Beirut, the first raid in the heart of Lebanon's capital. Lebanese officials say at least 5 people were killed and 11 injured in this Israeli strike on a medical facility, a building affiliated with Hezbollah. Earlier, the Lebanese Health Ministry confirmed at least 46 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in the previous 24 hours. And overnight, the US government has confirmed that an American man, 56-year-old Carmel Ahmad Jawad, is among those who died. The Israeli military says 8 of its soldiers were killed in the opening 2 days of its ground invasion of Lebanon. And this latest strike overnight came hours after a United Nations Security Council meeting where Israel warned it would retaliate if attacked.
We will defend our people, and our response will be swift and decisive. Those who attack us will face serious consequences.
Iran's unprecedented response, that barrage of missiles fired into Israel on Tuesday, has escalated this crisis just days before the first anniversary of the Hamas attacks last year on October the 7th. President Biden says G7 leaders are planning to coordinate new sanctions and other measures to respond to Iran's actions, but he did not support Israel striking Iran's nuclear sites.
The answer is no. I think there's things we'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all 7 of us agree that they have a right to respond, but they should respond in proportion.
The Middle East is on edge and tensions could not be higher, with Israel expected to launch a significant retaliatory attack on Iran any day. The US's commitment to Israel's security, according to the White House, remains ironclad. But the overwhelming concern is that conflicts on several fronts could soon erupt into a regional war. Peter Bowes, BBC News.
Let's take you back to Beirut and show you these images that we have coming in from the city. Once again, images showing the aftermath of an Israeli strike on the city, smoke billowing into the skyline. This is an image really that has become familiar over the past 2 weeks. And I want to take you a bit closer and show you this building in the Basra neighborhood. What we understand from the Israeli military is that they say they carried out a precise strike on this particular building, which is in central Beirut, close to the parliament. What we're hearing from the Lebanese Health Ministry is that 6 people were killed in that strike, and we continue to follow developments there from Beirut here on BBC News. Well, a little earlier, I was speaking to Yolande Nell, our correspondent in Jerusalem, and our Middle East correspondent, Hugo Beshega, who's in Beirut, gave us this update.
We heard 3 loud explosions here in Beirut at around midnight, and the district hit was the Bashura neighborhood here in central Beirut, not really far from where we are this morning, just a 5-minute drive from our position here. The first Israeli airstrike to hit the heart of Beirut in this conflict, and the Israeli military described this as a precision strike. It hit a building that it was housing a medical association linked to Hezbollah. We've seen images of the site of this attack, a residential building that was heavily damaged. The first floor of this building was partially destroyed. And there were more attacks targeting Dahieh, which is Hezbollah's stronghold in the south of the country. And earlier today, the Israeli military issued new evacuation orders urging residents to leave parts of Dahieh, saying that it would attack Hezbollah facilities and interests in that part of the city. So Beirut very much a target of the Israeli military as this offensive against Hezbollah continues. Obviously, in the south of the country, a ground invasion is underway. There have been reports this morning of intense airstrikes and shelling in several villages along the border, and indications by the Israeli military that they're planning to expand this offensive with more Israeli troops being sent to the border.
And what can you tell us about the impact on civilians there, especially in the south of Lebanon, following Israel's ground invasion of the country?
Yeah, we've seen that 1.2 million people have already been displaced because of this conflict. That's according to the Lebanese Prime Minister. Residents have fled the south, which has been obviously a main target of this Israeli campaign. This is an area where Hezbollah has a very strong presence, has built infrastructure that the Israeli military says needs to be destroyed. Also, residents fled the eastern Bekaa Valley, another Hezbollah stronghold here in Lebanon, and Dahieh. I was in Dahieh yesterday on a tour organized by Hezbollah. The group wanted to show the destruction caused by these Israeli airstrikes. And this was once a bustling district of Beirut, and it looks like a ghost town. Most residents have fled, shops are closed, streets are empty. And obviously, this wave of displaced residents is putting a lot of pressure on basic services. The authorities are saying that they're struggling to assist everybody who is in need. Also, hospitals struggling to deal with the sheer number of casualties as a result of these Israeli airstrikes. And now the Lebanese authorities and the UN are now urging countries around the world to help Lebanon to cope with this crisis. The Lebanese authorities say they need around $400 million to assist those civilians who've been affected by this conflict.
Hugo, thank you. Well, let's bring in Yolande Nell, who's in Jerusalem for us. And Yolande, President Biden calling on Israel to make sure its response to Iran is proportionate. What's the people making of that in Israel?
Well, it's quite hard to get a full response. I mean, today is a full holiday for most Jewish Israelis. People are off work, they're off school for the Jewish New Year. But we do know that just ahead of the holiday, the Israeli Security Cabinet met again to discuss those Iranian attacks, the ballistic missiles that were fired at Israel. And the decision was made that they should respond forcefully, according to reports, that they should hit strategic sites in Iran without giving any details of what those might be, but also crucially that Israel would be discussing what exactly to do with its closest ally, with the US. So we had President Biden coming out saying really that the nuclear sites in Iran were off limits. And we know there are lots of other diplomatic discussions taking place with the likes of the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken talking to European ministers, including Britain's David Lammy, about all that's going on. I mean, the real risk here is of what happens, that this develops into a kind of tit for tat, because Iran has already said that if there is to be a significant response from Israel, then it will hit back and it will target, it said, Israel's infrastructure. Now, at the same time as all this is developing, we have, the country still in a very high state of alert. There have been rocket warning sirens going off in northern Israel over the past few hours. This, as you have Israeli Israeli ground forces now inside southern Lebanon, fighting against Hezbollah, with 8 soldiers confirmed to have been killed in an ambush. That was the news that came through yesterday. 2 drones were spotted over central Israel as well in the past few hours. One of them crashed, one of them was intercepted. But it is keeping people who are, off for the holidays really sort of, on tenterhooks. They're still sort of watching and waiting to see what could happen next.
And that was the BBC's Yolande now. And before that, I was speaking to Hugo Bashega in Beirut. Well, Malcolm Nance is a former US Navy Middle East counterterrorism expert. I asked him for his analysis on President Biden's warning against attacks on Iran's nuclear sites.
Well, I think that we have to take that literally, as the president has said it. But if that is literal, that means that he's talking about not attacking the Bushehr nuclear power plant. That may not include Iranian Revolutionary Guard nuclear weapons development facilities, which have no atomic or fissile material there, like the Natanz Development Center, or the ballistic missile manufacturing sites or long-range drones facilities. The president said that he wanted a proportionate response. Israel was struck by 180, or at least they attempted to strike Israel with 180 ground launch, medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles. That means Israel has a strike capability that they could hit at least up to 180 targets. I don't believe Israel will do that. I think what they will do is they will pick something very specific and they will disable it in order to decrease the regime's capability of striking again.
And what's your assessment so far of Israel's ground invasion of Lebanon?
Yeah, I spent some time up in the north and of Israel, and I spent quite a bit of time in Lebanon. And, Israel has over 70,000 of its citizens displaced out of the north. Virtually every major village north of Haifa has been emptied, and they want to get their population back. To do that, you have to push Hezbollah again, and this has been done several times in the past. You have to push Hezbollah beyond the ability to launch short-range missiles that would strike civilian homes and small.
And that was Malcolm Nance there. And I just want to show you these live pictures once again that are coming in from Beirut. This is smoke billowing over the skies of the city. And this particular building is the focus of the attention at the moment. And this is a building in the Basra neighborhood. I think we can just show it to you now. Sorry, these are live pictures of Beirut. And we have also been showing you this building in central Beirut in the Basra neighborhood. It was the focus of an Israeli airstrike. As you can see, much of the building is damaged. The Israelis say it was a precise strike. The Lebanese health officials tell us that 6 people have been killed in that particular strike.